David Pickron, welcome to Pave the Way Podcast. I've been looking forward to this for the 3 days we had it scheduled.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to be here. We're looking forward to maybe helping really find the right tenant the first time for people who are watching this. That's really what, I mean, people say, what do you do? I say, I just really help find the right tenant the first time, So I'm excited to talk to you about that today with you and your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so timely now with, the COVID era ending and a lot of
Yes.
everyone's starting to get back on the saddle now.
Yeah.
And, we have a big following in New York State where our business operates out of. So I'm a landlord up there. I have a lot of friends who are landlords up there. So, when we all get together, I'm actually going over there tonight and taking the red eye back to the East Coast. We always talk about our tenant problems because there's always another problem there. I just got an email today from my attorney who's like, we finally got the warrant.
Oh, geez. Get him out, huh?
It's a bloodbath, man. So to prevent that, and this was an inherited tenant, so I had no control over it. But long story short, just tell the listeners a little bit about your background, and then we'll cover the nuts and bolts of how to get good tenants.
Absolutely. So I've been a private investigator close to 30 years. I got into we taken more of an investigative approach when we do a background on a tenant than just this instant database, something you get online, something that Zillow uses. That's all instant. You put their name in, you get instant results back. We know that those aren't updated. We know that those records aren't that great. And if I'm going to hand somebody over a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 asset, shoot, you're in California, New York, $1 million asset. I don't want to use a cheap background screening. I don't want to use something that's instant that acts like they're great because they're fast. Listen, in the background world, fast isn't good. You actually need human eyeballs to look at things and get those type of instincts. And I'll share some stories with you today that just happened in the last couple of days with us in this podcast. But the thing is I knew back in the day when I was a PI and I was doing backgrounds, I was actually doing evictions. I have an eviction company out here in Arizona. And before the internet came along, a lot of my clients were coming to me and saying, hey, listen, you just evicted this guy at this property. We had no way of knowing. We moved him in, and now you're evicting him again. Can we pay you to look at your eviction records and who you're evicting and then get us a credit bureau? And that's where I got into kind of the investigative screening business back before the internet came around. Now, as the internet came around, we saw it as some wonderful tools to make things quicker, faster, and more efficient, but we couldn't take that human being, that investigator, out of the process, right? I mean, think about what you're doing as a landlord when you're showing your property or when you're talking to somebody on the phone. You're asking questions and you're just sucking up all this information to decide what you want to do, right? So you're really being a private investigator when you're talking to a potential tenant, right? Every question you're asking, you're listening. Wait a minute, they got a good job. What can I determine credit scores or about their credit? Are they going to have roommates? Do they have criminal history? Do they smoke? Do they have pets? I mean, we're trying to gather as much information as landlords as we possibly can. And why is that? Because we want to make the best decision for our property and bottom line for our pocketbook.
Absolutely.
Right. So what we do is we come in and we check the criminal records, the eviction records, civil records, credit. We check their identity. Like a lot of people nowadays, they're getting away with it because they're not giving the right social. They're changing their name because their real name and their real social and their real date of birth is telling them no apartment, no home. And so they're saying, wait a minute, I need a place to live. So let me change some of this. So a lot of what we do as PIs before we even start a background is we make sure the person who's applying with you is really who they say they are. And that's a big one. That's a big one right there.
Man, I'm so happy we're doing this show because it's unbelievable.
So we've built a suite, and I don't want to do too much of a commercial on what we have at Rent Perfect, but we built a suite of products that helps a landlord take on someone from showing all the way to rent pay and in between. So for example, Greg, we're having lunch and I showed my property to somebody. They went home and said, I'll think about it. They shoot me a text or a call while we're having lunch. And they say, hey, we decided we want the place and it's still available. I said, great. Give me your email address. I'll text you something. We continue to have lunch. I text this off to them. It takes me less than 5 seconds and they start filling out their applications online, right? Yeah. They're uploading IDs. They're uploading their paycheck stubs. They're uploading all kinds of information that I don't have to ask for later while you and I are having lunch. Once I get the whole package, I have everything I need. If they did it correctly, I have everything I need to make a decent decision and move on to the next step. So we built this program that really helps landlords manage. Now, I love property managers, but our property managers take 10% of what we do out here. Okay.
Yeah.
I bring in, just not to get too personal, but I bring in about $32,000 worth of rent a month into my own properties. Okay. If I were to pay out,
this is your rentals and
my rentals, right? So I built this because I'm a landlord. I'm talking to you as a private investigator today and what we do in the backgrounds. But the reality is, I know where you live because I am you guys. So I bring in about $32,000 worth of rent a month. I would be paying $3,200 a month in property management fees. That my whole Rent Perfect system takes care of it for me. It does everything a property manager does for me, except for probably make the phone call for you to the air conditioning company or to the, to come fix something around the house, which is totally simple to do. You get the right vendor.
Call the handyman. You call Chuck in a truck and he's there in no time.
Yeah. So why pay $3,200 a month if you're me, if my little, app will manage the whole thing for you? Here's what's great. You pay under $10 to get our program one time. And then we have the applicants pay an application fee to us directly, to Rent Perfect directly. So that's all free to you also. So the reality is you pay $10 up front. The whole system's free to you. And it saves me $3,200 a month in fees. So I love property managers. If you're out of state, if you just don't have the personality to be a landlord, go get a property manager. That's fine. We have a ton of them on our platform too that use our system. So I don't want to down property managers. I think they're great, but I don't need one, and it saves me a lot of money, and I can take that money and go buy other properties. But not to get off on a tangent there, but can I ask you a question, Greg?
Absolutely.
Can I put you on the spot?
Put me right on the spot, man. I got my nice shirt on.
What landlords did not get hurt during COVID?
The landlords who had properly screened tenants who did the right background check.
The landlords who had the right tenants. They didn't even know there was an eviction moratorium. They didn't even know. It didn't even faze them because they had done proper checks and made sure that the person they put in their property are solid, right? Now, if you can get through COVID, I think you're going to be able to get through this recession coming up, right? So if you've got a tenant in there right now, that's awesome, that got through COVID, do whatever it takes to keep that person the next year or two, because we might be going through some troubling times again, and they've already proven that they can make it happen. So first and foremost, landlords, if you're watching this, tie up the people who are treating you right now, even if that means taking $100 off a month in rent, buying them some kind of gym member. I don't know what you do to get them excited. I put in new countertops in some of my properties. I put some new flooring in. It raised the value of my properties, but it was like a reward to my tenants who got through COVID without any issues. And so the bottom line is we have to screen better now than we've ever screened before. And believe it or not, doing backgrounds right now is harder than it's ever been. And here is why. The courts are diverting all of these criminal cases. They're doing no cash bail. They are protecting criminals like crazy. So companies like me can't get to their records. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if I go to a court, everything's expunged. I can't see anything. Everything says, I give you guys back a report that says, hey, listen, as far as the court's concerned, there are no records in the court for this person. But it doesn't mean they didn't get in trouble. It just means the court is really, really protecting them. So we need to make sure that we do more due diligence to make sure that the people applying with us are the right people. Now, let me give you an example yesterday. I have a gal who actually works for me. She's also a landlord. She meets somebody, she likes them, she has them fill out an application. When she gets her packet back from Rent Perfect, on the paycheck stub, it said tobacco. He wasn't getting his insurance deduction at his business because he smokes. But in her criteria, she said no smokers. At the time of seeing the property, no one talked about smoking, right? But all of a sudden on the paycheck stub, we see this little tobacco thing. Now, I can tell you, I could throw that paycheck stub in front of 100 landlords. Less than 2 or 3 would pick up that one line that on the insurance line of a paycheck stub that said tobacco. Okay. That's how deep we have to go nowadays.
Absolutely. Especially in New York, California.
Yeah, we just can't go to Zillow, run their background, get something back, look at a credit score. Okay, great, go. You're going to get into trouble. You really need to pay attention to the details. But here's what I promise you. If you'll spend a little bit more time up front with these applicants, they'll be there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You can put them on autopilot, rent perfect, can put their rent from their bank account to your bank account. You can go by and see the property, do your inspections if you want. But listen, why spend our time right now doing the work and putting ourselves on autopilot for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? That's what I do. I don't have time to spend all this babysitting time on my rentals. I make sure I spend the right amount of time on the very front end, and I do not get lazy at all. At all.
That is so gold. I hope everyone re-listens to that little segment you just said, because I tell a lot of people, that ask me about the rental business or the flip business, mainly the rental business. I say, if you want rentals to work, you need 2 things. You need a good property, you need a great property, you need great tenants. Mm-hmm. I said, if you have a bad property and great tenants, you're going to get a lot of maintenance calls. So you got to fix that. Mm-hmm. If you got a great property, but you got bad tenants, you're going to just get calls all day long about people busting your chops. And actually doing another eviction right now on a property we're in contract to buy. But the big thing that I heard you say on another podcast was your process on how your system really vets these people. And you said something I want you to cover, because this really blew my mind. I didn't even know about this until you said it on the podcast with Clint Coons, is you actually ask for 12 months of bank statements, which it makes so much sense. And the reason is because when you're doing a loan, well, not a loan, when you're doing a landlord lease to a tenant, you're essentially you're loaning them money essentially for at least a year. And you got to make sure they can pay that back, or else you got to go to the eviction process. So just kind of elaborate that, because it was brilliant. And I was like blown away. I'm like, man, I've never done that.
Well, it's funny, because if you go purchase a home and the lender asks you for 12 months worth of bank statements, you get it to them right away.
Right away.
You want that home so bad, you're willing to jump through anything. But for some reason, as landlords, we have this mindset that, maybe we're asking too much if we ask for 12 months worth of bank statements. Listen, bank statements are a hero right now. I'm leaning on bank statements more than anything else right now. Let me tell you why. If we've had 2 years of an eviction moratorium behind us, right? There's no evictions in the files, guys. That you can hire me all day long. I can go search the courts. Even if they didn't pay their rent for 2 years, there's no evictions in those files. So how are we going to find out if they paid their rent during COVID? You call the landlord, and if they're still living there, the landlord's going to say, oh, no, they're great. Get them out of here. They're not paying me rent, right? But they're not really going to tell you that. They're going to say, oh, we decided to sell the home. These guys are great. In the back of their mind, they're just saying, any way I can get these guys out is great. If I give a bad reference, they're not going to get out. So I'm not going to give a bad reference. Well, as a private investigator, I want to see something on paper. I don't want to see people's opinion. Okay. So I'm taking those bank statements now. So the last tenant I just put in about a month ago, took her bank statements. I went through all 12 months of last year, and I noticed that I didn't see her rent in July and August come out of her bank account. I circled everything all the way down January, February, March, April, right? And I didn't see July and August. And I came back and I said, hey, listen, I see everything. I don't see July, August. She said, oh, my husband paid that out of his bank account. Okay, guess what? Husband, send me 12 months worth of bank accounts. And lo and behold, no rent, January, and then July rent. She was being truthful and honest with me. She wasn't telling me stories. I went and said, okay, income, here's income, checks coming in. I try not to look at, they will go to Chick-fil-A or they go to McDonald's or they buy Starbucks, or I try not to get into their own personal life and go there, but I am looking at income coming in, and I'm looking at rent going out, which should be very consistent. It also tells me if it clears their bank account on the 2nd or 3rd, they probably presented a check the 30th, the 31st, or the 1st, right? But if that check is clearing on the 18th of the month, either the landlord's super lazy and holding that check, which I can't believe they would do, or they're late pay, right? So it also tells me about the time of month that they're paying. Now, before we had all this online screening, we went and got bank statements, but they were harder to get from the banks because we didn't have phones and they weren't all well, organized right there on our phone. But nowadays, if I ask someone for 12 months worth of bank statements, they can get on their phone app and have those to me within minutes. So am I really asking for too much, Greg? I don't think so. Because if I'm going to hand somebody who has no experience with managing 3, 4, 5, 600,000, that's what I feel like I'm giving them when I give them my rental property, then I want to see something, on the way back. Because I call your applicants or your tenants, I call them business partners. They're actually super important to me. They're not just renters. They're the person that puts money in my bank account. So you say you need a good property, you need a good tenant. I love that. But it's not the property that makes you money, from a month-to-month basis. It makes you money on appreciation in the long run. But if you have a property with no tenant in it, how much money are you making? Zero. So if we quit looking at, and I use the word tenant quite a bit, but if we use the word business partner and we said, hey, listen, we're both going to manage this asset, okay? I'm going to ask you to pay one bill out of our business partner relationship a month. That one bill is rent, right? I'm going to ask you on a day-to-day to maintain our asset together, okay? Then I'm going to treat them a little bit different. Now, I'm not saying be friends with them. I'm not saying change that relationship, have a business relationship with them. You are running a business. But if we saw them as really the person that's going to help us get wealthier, that's the person right there that's putting the money in our bank account, right? So
they're they're your customer. They're your partner.
That's
a great way to reframe it.
Keep them. I have people who've been in some properties 15 years, 10 years, 5 years. I do long-term. I do short-term. I do commercial. I do quite a bit. And man, I'm not afraid to give up $100. I'm not afraid to go drop off a Christmas gift. I'm not afraid to go do something special for them when they're there for 6, 7, 8, 9 years,
100%. Especially when they're paying and they're good tenants. Like, if they call me and they're like, oh, hey, this is broken, I'm sending someone out there right away. I'm like, I'm on it. Don't worry about it. But if they're kind of like, like I've had some crazy stories, as you can imagine, but I had this one, tenant, they just kept playing like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. And I was getting fed up with them. And they actually called me, and I was at a barbecue on Labor Day. So it was kind of inappropriate, but they were like, oh my God, you got to get someone out here right now. Like, oh, there's a squirrel coming through the thing. And I'm like, yo, it's like Labor Day. Like, I'm at a barbecue. Like, is anyone burning? Are there critters burning in there? They're like, no. So I was like, all right, take a back seat. They end up calling pest control, and I got smoked with that one. But they were like, those tenants are unfortunately still at my property because I inherited them. But like, they kind of like we're busting my chops for a while. So I'm not going to prioritize them as much as I'd prioritize the tenant who's like, hey, I'm going to like this one guy, my favorite tenant. I tell him every month, I'm like, you're my favorite tenant, Will. Nicest guy, pays the rent, doesn't bust my chops. If he calls me, he's like, hey, I got to get something repaired. I'm sending someone out there right away because he cooperates with me and he's a great business partner.
Right.
So it's really all about building that relationship, like you said, up front. So you get the bank statements. As a landlord, as someone who's going to really do this at a high level, when you look for income, like at least you personally, when you're looking for what do you require that tenant to be bringing in on either a single or a joint household basis as a minimum requirement to make sure they can afford that rent? Because that's going to be a real problem in my area in New York.
So 3 times the amount of rent is the household income. So husband works, wife work. He might be 1 to 1, 2 to 1. She might be, but household, I combine them together to make sure. And things are getting expensive nowadays. You're starting to see grandma move in.
Yes.
And take her Social Security check and add it to the till. And so I usually don't look at anybody's one employment too heavily. I just want to make sure that the numbers add up. But let me tell you too, though, what people lost their jobs during COVID, right? How many restaurants closed? How many waiters, right?
Yeah.
If you have people on the very making it paycheck to paycheck and they're a waiter, we're going to see a lot of restaurants close here as this recession plays out, right? Yeah. But if you have a school teacher, a government worker, a police officer, right? Somebody in the medical field, all of those jobs will survive this recession. So look at your 3-to-1 ratios and stuff, but also look at what type of job they're in, because, you don't want that phone call saying, I lost my job. I'm not going to be able to pay rent. They were a good person. I believe most people are good, but good things bad things happen to good people, right? But if you can prevent somebody losing their job. And these are people that were maybe what I call in the conditional range. So they're really on the edge. I mean, if they qualify with your criteria, they qualify. But there are some that are in that gray area that you're kind of deciding, you're at 2.75. My criteria says 3. You really don't qualify, but I'm going to make a conditional exception and put you in just those are things that you need to think about, the type of job that they have to see if they're going to survive some downturn there.
You said that perfectly, man.
Perfectly. Not to go back, Greg, but you talked about inheriting these problems, right?
That's how I get most of my revenue.
Could you have prevented these people from moving into your property if you would have taken them through a showing and if you would have done the background check on them? Could you have prevented some of these issues? Now, the reason I ask you this is there are people who have criminal records, evictions records. Those are all easy to find, right?
Yeah.
But I also want to find the person who is going to be a victim mentality, who's going to call you on Monday and say the squirrel is, like we can take care of that on Tuesday, right? So what I will do is at the time of showing, I will just ask 2 questions and then I completely and totally listen. And the 2 questions I ask is, what are you going to miss from the home you're currently leaving? What are you going to miss? And then I just shut up, right? If I hear this, well, I'm not going to miss that landlord who never returned my phone call, and they start dogging on the landlord. I know I'm the next landlord that's going to be in that position. I am no better than their current landlord, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to be calling me at all hours of the night. They're going to call me about the squirrel. They're going to be calling me. Now, listen, I say if there's a problem, take care of it. I want to be a good landlord because I want that tenant there for 5-10 years.
Yeah.
But there is that mentality of every landlord is evil. Every landlord is rich. Every landlord, I pay my rent, so I should have a 24-hour servant that does anything I want. And I should be living in Beverly Hills and everything should be perfect. That same person, if they own their home and the squirrel situation happened, they wouldn't take care of it till Tuesday or Wednesday anyways, if they owned the home, right?
Exactly.
And then I ask them, what is it that you like better about this home that you're looking at? Because I want to know what they're seeing, what they like. And so that'll bring up a bunch of conversation that will actually weed out kind of that mentality. And then it'll actually help you sell the property. So this last one of the things the girl said she's going to miss was the big park right across the street for the kids. Well, actually, she came down the road one way, but if you go the other way, just around the corner, there's a monster, huge, great park. I said, you know what? Let me tell you about the park you're not seeing right now, but it's just around the corner. Let me take you over. Oh my gosh, this is a great park. So I'm not going to miss that park anymore, right? Or one of them said a little while back, they said, I'm going to miss my great neighbors. I thought, wow, that's fantastic. Because that's someone who gets along with the neighbors and isn't going to call a nitpick and isn't going to leave trash out and isn't going to do stuff to offend the neighbors. I'm not going to get HOA phone calls. They're people who see the value of loving their neighbors, right?
So true, man.
So I didn't ask questions like, do you love your neighbor? I just asked them, what are you going to miss? What do you like about this one? And then I just shut up, and trust me, everything comes my way on everything that I need to know. So if you're in control of getting those tenants into your property, like we always like to be, you might want to put that, into your landlord toolbox too.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah.
That's such a practical thing. People are going to I call it R&D this after they listen to the show, rip off and duplicate, because
that's why I tell everybody.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good, man. It's funny after, I started buying property actually during COVID, like to keep. I've flipped like hundreds of houses, but I just started smartening up and buying rentals. And I've noticed that, when it comes to actually, I want to cover like how to do the evictions. Obviously, every state's going to be different, but this is my strategy. I want to kind of get your feedback on it because I feel like it's a logical way to do it. And I'm pretty good at doing it, but it doesn't get 100% success rate. So when there's we call it I got a good friend who's a big landlord. He doesn't call it an eviction. He calls it a relocation. Okay. The word eviction's got this bad rap to it, but a relocation sounds reasonable. So he's like, I'm going to relocate a tenant this month. So anyway, if I got to relocate a tenant, it's like, same deal, right?
Right.
I always tell the tenant, listen, because I want the least amount of resistance as possible, right? And I want it to make sense for them. Like, I'm not like, they got to go, but
you want to protect your property.
Exactly.
Right.
So I say, and I never tell them I'm the owner. I always say that my boss is making the final decision, which is usually true, which I got to call my boss, who happens to be in this room right now.
Exactly.
But I say, listen, fortunately, I have a good feeling we're going to be able to work this out. Unfortunately, though, you're going to have to eventually leave the property. So Mr. Tenant, Mrs. Tenant, I want to make sure this is the easiest transition for you. So we're going to offer you $1,000 or insert your dollar amount to relocate, right? And we're also going to pay for a moving service as long as it's within 30 miles. So you can have the easiest transition possible. And this is where I get them to commit right away so they don't drag. Because a lot of tenants, unfortunately, are just procrastinators. It's the way it is. It is what it is. I say, I have to have my boss approve it, but I'm pretty sure he will. He's going to ask for a decision by tomorrow at 7 p.m. And if we don't hear from you on this offer, we'll just assume it's a no, and we'll just go forward with our standard, relocation process, which is an eviction. It's a nice way of saying an eviction. So I just did this yesterday with a tenant, and I get a text from them because it's Pacific time here, but it was Eastern time in New York. And I said, I need to hear from you by 7 p.m. And they reach out to me at like 5:30, and they go, hey, I just want to make sure I got back to you by 7 or by 7 p.m. We're going to take the offer. We're good to go. So now they're relocating somewhere else. And these people weren't paying rent for 2 years from the seller I was buying the house from. So basically, I offer them money to leave. And then if they give me any resistance, I say, here's the deal. I start to throw the hammer down. I say, at the end of the day, you're going to be relocating from this property. I said, it might take 30, 40 days and you'll leave with some money. Or if you don't want to cooperate, I totally get it. I know you're living here right now. We will get the eviction, attorney involved, and eventually you'll leave with no money. I said, what do you want to do? And then I put the ball in their court, and about 70% of the time they take my offer. Then the 30% we do an eviction, and it is what it is. So what are your thoughts on that, like, kind of process we use?
I would add on that, if we go the hard route, not only you're not going to get the $1,000 or whatever your fee is,
no,
you're going to get a stain on your record that's going to prevent you from getting your next house. You probably add that in there, I imagine.
Yeah.
Because that's actually going to cost them more money than losing the $1,000 is having an eviction on your record. The only other date that I think I would put forward, and I'm sure you do this, but just in the information you gave me, is I would say the house needs to be cleaned and you need to be out before we give you that check. I'm more than positive you do that, because it would not work. But if anybody's listening to this, I don't want them to go, we'll take the deal. Okay, I'll write you the check tomorrow night.
No. Oh my gosh.
They are out of the property. You have inspected it. And that $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, whatever your state eviction costs are with attorneys, you could come out ahead paying them just to get out. So
absolutely.
Yeah. But I'd also would add to, and I think Greg, you'd agree, I'd make the offer one time. And it's tomorrow night by 7. And once you make your decision, just go. We need another 24 hours. Don't let them delay you. You're already delayed, so I love it. 7 o'clock, you're calling your attorney, or you're starting to process them out the door. So how many days do you usually give them on your end?
So I tell them that they have 24 hours to decide. And this is my favorite line. If we don't hear from you by 7, the next day, we're going to assume it's a no. And we're going to, so that what that does is it basically automates the process. Because if we don't hear from them, we go right to step 2. If we do hear from them, they have urgency. And
so if they say, we want to take the money, how long do we have before we have to be out? What is your timeline usually?
30 to 60 days. Is normally what I give them. Because in New York, you're not going to believe this. If the tenant has been there for more than 2 years, you have to give them a 90-day notice. So you give them 90 days, and then they technically need to pay you rent, but usually they'll default, and then you switch over to a non-payment, and then they can play back and forth, which is painful. I've been there. But then once the 90-day notice is served to them by a process server, you're legally entitled to collect your rent for 90 days. And this is where it gets hairy. And I'm dealing with this right now. I haven't gotten paid in 5 months from these animals in my one property. And if they're listening, you guys are getting out soon. Dude, I'm a nut. I'm a nut with it because I'm nice until I'm not nice.
Right.
So they paid rent and then they didn't leave after the 90 days. So this is where New York is a disaster. Once the 90-day notice expires and they're not out of the property, you have to file for a motion in court. And then you can't collect rent. So that process now, because then they're in default. So then you can't collect rent, because if you collect rent and deposit the rent, it
Stops everything.
wipes out the whole thing. Yeah. So then you're bleeding money for a couple months. And then by the time they get the adjournment, and that's when my fangs come out. And that's when I'm like, I'm going to be standing in the corner while you're getting evicted, just shaking my head, being like, you could have had $3,000.
Yeah. It could have went better.
Could have went better. So if you're doing business in a state that's a little tenant friendly, you really need to have a good attorney, and you have to have the right expectations, because if you don't, you're just going to be disappointed, because it's going to take longer than you probably think.
Well, let me put a plug in for Arizona. You don't pay the rent on the first, you get a 5-day notice on the second. You're in court by the 9th or 10th. You get a writ of restitution by about the 21st day of the month. And the constable can't come out now until 30 days after you file, because of a federal law in the CARES Act that kicked us back from 21 days to 30. So we lost 90 days, but you almost can have them out by your next rental period. So if you are going to invest, a big part of where you're going to invest has to do with the rules and regulations of the states, the cities, the counties. It's worth investigating where it is still landlord friendly. It's getting less popular to be landlord friendly, but there are still places out there where, I don't have to offer $1,000, $2,000 because my eviction is going to be within 30 days and super quick, right?
Yeah.
I love that strategy. Don't get me wrong, but in our certain jurisdiction, I'm not paying you anything, right?
Do you have to hire an attorney, or do you just do it on your own?
You can do it on your own, but especially for non-payment, because there's nothing to fight about. In Arizona, you can't hold your rent for anything. You can't hold your rent because something didn't get fixed. You can't hold the judge. Pretty much the hearing goes like this. Did you pay your rent? No. Okay. Judgment for plaintiff. I mean, just that quick. So we kick through. It's that fast. Now they're trying to change it, and we're trying to get the liberal side's trying to, change it a little bit here. But the bottom line is, it's pretty landlord friendly out here in Arizona. So this is a great place to invest. We're a little high in our prices. You just got to find the deals, but I know there's a lot of other places out there that are great places to be a landlord. Yeah. And there are places you just want to stay away from.
We call it the flyover states. You want to go invest in the states you fly over on your way from New York to California, Arizona, Texas, Florida. One more thing about New York, and then we'll start to wind the show down, is so this is ridiculous. This blows my mind. So if I own my property as Greg Helbeck, which I don't, they're all in LLCs. If you own a property in your personal name, you can do an eviction on your own, representing yourself. But if you own a property in an LLC, by the state of New York law, you have to hire an attorney, which costs some money. So they just make it all complicated there. So the real thing is, if you're going to do business in a state like that, you got to know what you're doing. You got to be on on your stuff, and you got to be using software, like David's, so you can prevent this from happening. So as we wrap the show up, can you just cover a little bit more in detail on what Rent Perfect can provide a landlord? Because I really have a good feeling that a lot of people are going to listen to this show, and they're going to want to go check this out and have their tenants start using it.
Awesome. So I'm going to close with a story.
Love stories.
About 3-4 years ago, I actually had somebody give me a 30-day notice, and they're moving out. And I hate to lose rent. So I actually had someone moving in the day after they moved out. And which is very scary, as you know, because you never know how you're going to get back the property, right? Yeah,
that's right.
So on that last day, I'm coming to do my walkthrough with the tenant, and I open the door, they invite me in, and I thought I'd be up all night rehabbing this place, but the carpets are shampooed, they get the lines in them, the walls are perfectly, fixed, and all the holes in the walls are fixed, and they're painted, and they're matched, and the place is clean, it's got a good smell, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get some sleep tonight. Thank you so much, tenant. So I wouldn't recommend this, but I must have just really been having a good day. I got out my checkbook and I said, hey, I am so thankful the way you've left this for me, because I got people moving in the next morning. I'm going to give you a deposit back right now. Okay?
That's amazing.
Now, I don't recommend that, but for some reason that day I did that. So I wrote him a check, and I usually get 1 month's rent deposit. It's just my standard. Always have done it. If rent's $2,000, it's a $2,000 deposit.
Yeah, security deposit, right?
If I remember right, I wrote him $1,600, and I gave him the check, and he looked at it. And he says, "Hey, I really appreciate this." I said, "I appreciate you." He said, "But when I moved in 5 years ago, you only made me pay a $500 deposit."
Wow.
And I went, hey, can I have that check back? You know?
Yeah.
And he gave it back to me and I wrote him the $500 check. But I thought to myself, that's a $900 mistake, right? Actually, $1,100 mistake. And I thought, why did I not know my deposit? Because my lease that I signed 5 years ago, I think was at my house in a manila folder, but it might've been in my office too, because I moved a couple times and that lease was 5 years old and I wasn't super organized and I didn't know where it was. And so if he would have took my $1,600 check and cashed it, he would have got away with it. I wouldn't have known it. That's fine. But now with Rent Perfect, because I have your application, I have your lease, I have your move out and move in inspections, I have your rental payment history on there. I have everything on my phone. So I could have easily went, beep, 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 looked up lease, security deposit, $500. Because before I created this whole Rent Perfect package, I wasn't that organized because there was too much stuff going on. And I'm getting older. You can see, guys, I'm in my 50s. I don't remember like I used to remember. 5 years ago, I don't remember if I got a $500 deposit or a $1,600 deposit. I don't remember that. Yeah. 5 years is a long time. And so let me tell you, one thing about Rent Perfect is a whole suite of software that takes you everywhere from onboarding your tenant to managing your tenant to helping them move in to doing a move out inspection through there. And there's so much more we could talk about. We'd go for a very, very long time. But I have a move-in inspection on there where you send them an invite. They go into the house. They go into every bedroom. Is the countertops good? Are the windows good? Are the cabinets good? They sign off on everything. If they see a chip somewhere, they take a picture. There's a chip here. I didn't do that. They dock it. It's a wizard that takes them and does a whole inspection on the whole house. They go into each bedroom. How are the windows, the window sills, the closets? And they sign off on everything. They take pictures. So when they do move out and there's a big hole in the wall and they're like, well, that was there when I moved in, you have this entire walkthrough they went through and proved that it wasn't there. It saves a lot of stuff. That's just one more thing up and over everything that Rent Perfect does. Now,
you can collect rent too on it. You can collect rent.
Yep, it collects rent. And we're getting ready to launch something we call Vendor VIP, which is a whole work order system, hires vendors for you. You have preferred vendors in our program. This is coming out. I'm kind of giving you a snapshot. A lot of people don't know about this yet. But if you have three, so when we're in Arizona in June and July, we can't find air conditioning guys. Every one of them are booked. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, I can imagine.
So it looks like when one of your tenant has an air conditioning problem, you're picking up the phone and calling 7 different people. Can you get there today? Can you get there today? Can you get there today? And it's tiring. My program's going to have, if I have those 7 preferred vendors, it's sending out text to the first guy. Hey, I got an air conditioning problem. Can you handle it? Yes or no? He says no. It goes to the next guy, goes to the next guy, goes to the next guy. And it actually acts as a secretary for me and finds me an air conditioning guy that's available today to get something done. So that's not in there yet, but that's coming. It's something we're working on. So that'll go all the way from, you meeting the people at property, they want your property, all the way to managing it, getting vendors, all the way to paying rent every month, and then eventually doing a move out inspection.
That's amazing.
So, and we're continuing to work on it. As a landlord, when I come up with a problem, I just go build something that helps us as landlords get it done.
That's amazing. Now, if someone wanted to utilize the entire suite, now what does it cost a landlord on like a monthly basis if they want to?
Okay, so we talked about the $10 to sign up, right? And then it's free. It's free because the applicants are going to pay the background check fee. It's free to you. Okay. Amazing. Your lease is free. Okay. If you require them to pay renter's insurance, your tenant's going to pay renter's insurance, right? The only other fee you're going to have in Rent Perfect is $10 a month if you use the rent pay feature. The reality is that $10 a month doesn't come to me. It goes to the credit card processor.
Yeah.
It processes all the money. Okay.
Yeah.
But they need to make some money as they move all this money around. So you get as many accounts coming into each bank account is $10. So I have 3 LLCs on all my properties. Okay. Don't tell anybody. Everybody wants you to have, 1 LLC per property.
Pain in the ass. I did not do that.
Sorry. I've got, 4, 5, 6 in each LLC.
Same.
I pay $10 each LLC and all the rent filters into each of those bank accounts.
Okay? Oh, that's amazing.
So I pay $30 a month to use the rent pay, collecting 16 to 20 checks a month. So
That's
I
amazing.
would pay it. Remember how much it saved me for property management fees?
$3,200 a month.
I would pay way more than that to have that rent pay feature. I no more have to go to the mailbox, right? I don't have to give out my bank account number. Nowadays, you're giving out your bank account number is now becoming your social security number. People are doing so much online wire fraud with your bank account number.
Crazy.
You could no longer afford to pass out a check with that on there. Keep that private nowadays, right? So we help landlords keep that private. I no longer they don't have to come to my house, come to my work. I go to their house. I don't even have to call them anymore if the rent doesn't come in, because if it's due on the 1st, on the 5 days before it's due, it says rent's due in 5 days, rent's due in 4 days, rent's due in 3 days. I want me on their mind at this time of the month, right? Rent's due today. Rent's late tomorrow with a late fee of this. Rent is due today with a late fee. Tomorrow, the late fee goes to this. It hits them twice a day on text and on email. It's a little harassing, but I want it to be a little bit harassing because I want them to get me my money. So it's awesome. I used to have a lady that paid me on the 5th, and she just lived just down the road, not even a quarter mile away from me. Used to pay on the 5th every month just because I let her get away with it. Like, I have a late fee of $50 on the 4th, and she paid me the 5th. And I just like, is it worth going back and getting the $50 and taking time out of my day? And so I allowed her, I trained her to pay me on the, I'm mad. You don't pay me till the 5th, but guess what? I trained her to pay.
Tolerated it.
I put her on this rent pay, and after the 1st, if she gets her late fee, I go, oh man, I'm sorry. It's the computer. It's out of my control. I can't pull that off even if I wanted to. I'm so sorry. You might want to get it on the 1st next month. Never paid after the 1st in the last 2 years she's been on it. So
it's amazing.
Anyways, yeah, it's just a great system. And guys, it's cheap. It's almost free, for goodness sakes. I charge $10 up front because I actually have to do not a full background check on you, but I have to make sure that you own a property and that you're who you say you are, because I'm going to be sharing people's socials with you, their date of birth with you, valuable information. I got to make sure that the guy is a bad apple, is not signing up with me and getting a lot of bad
valuable sensitive information. Yeah.
So that $10 that I even charge is really for a good cause. It's not even going into my pocket.
I mean, now with inflation, that's not even gonna get you 2 gallons of gas out here in San Diego.
No. So right now currently it's $44.95 per applicant to do the background. And if anybody's really worried about how I make my mortgage, that's where my money comes from. Right there is out of the tenant's pocket to us. And one other thing that I want to add, and I could just go on and on, so I'll shut up here after I say this, but when they're applying with us, your tenant is applying at Rent Perfect. They're calling Rent Perfect. We're giving them customer service. We're walking them through the onboarding process. They're not calling you to do that, right? They're not saying, well, how do I fill it? They're calling us. So we make it even that much easier on when you onboard an applicant. Let us take all the technical problems, or I don't have a paycheck stub, or what do I do? Or, all that. Let us take that from you. That's worth it right there by itself. So
that's unbelievable, man. I'm excited to check it out because so just real quick for myself, I can basically tell my tenants, hey, for now on, tenants, you're going to pay through this. And then they could just put their account information. I don't have to deal with Zelle and Venmo and all that bullshit.
No, I was going right. Exactly. I was going Zelle, Venmo in my office.
Cash app. Yeah.
You paid me on this. Tenant pays me on the 1st. This one on the 15th. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh shoot, am I?
Yeah. Oh, Bob, did you pay me rent? Yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
I don't do that anymore, man. It's so nice.
I love it. I'm gonna share the shit out of this too with my friends. I'm eating dinner with my buddy Joe, and I'm like, dude, if you don't get this software, you are a complete bozo.
We do all 50 states. We cover the whole United States. And it's super simple. One other thing is you send out the invite. So you don't have like a website with a link on it where everybody's applying. You control who applies with you. I love that you control that. I want to know when I give somebody the right to apply, I'm going to let them run all the way through to see if I'm not going to set it out to 10 people.
Yeah. Right.
And then use it as a profit center. We're going to get in a lot of trouble with fair housing if you do that. So it keeps you totally in control of who, applies for your property. So it's
amazing.
It's a good thing.
Well, if they want to check it out, they go to rentperfect.com. Very easy domain to remember. If they want to reach out to you, I know you got some podcasts you put out there. So how can they get in touch with you if they wanted to connect with you, David?
480-305-1350. You ask for me. If I'm here, there's a good chance you're going to get me. I don't I don't filter a ton of phone calls. So if you have a problem, give me a call. You can find us on YouTube. If you want to look at podcasts on YouTube, we have all of our podcasts posted there, or they're posted at Apple, Google, all the places that you can find podcasts. We write articles quite a bit, and at repperfect.com, it'll give you links to everything you need to know about us. And so hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. Our customer service, guys, is awesome. You will get a human being that answers and helps you out instead of, I always go to Zillow. I like Zillow. I use them for
automated
advertising, but
bot.
Yeah. But I can't talk to anybody about anything. So
no.
Anyways, give us a call. We'll help you out.
Love it. Well, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoy these types of conversations. Thank you so much for being a guest, and I'm looking forward to promoting this. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg.